And it's a mystery to me, and I'll share it with you. If I believed that there was a Saviour who'd been appointed or sent by, or a prophet, appointed or sent by a God who bore me in mind and loved me and wanted the best for me, if I believed that, and that I possessed the means of grace and the hope of glory, to phrase it like that, I think I might be happy. They say it's the way to happiness. Why doesn't it make them happy? Well, don't you think it's a perfectly decent question? Why doesn't it? Because they won't be happy till you believe it too. And why is that? Because that's what their holy books tell them. Now, I'm sorry, it's enough with saying in the name of religion. Do these texts say that until every knee bows at the name of Jesus and so on, there will be no happiness? Of course it is what they say. It isn't just a private belief. It is rather, and I think always has been, and it's why I'm here, actually a threat to the idea of a peaceable community. And very often, as now, and frequently, a very palpable one. So I think that's the underlying energy that powers the friendly disagreement between Tony and myself.
Tony, would you like to come back on that topic of religion and community, or move on to another question? Let's move on. Also on our website, big discussion around the topic of religion and its role in the invasion of Iraq. And Mr. Blair, the question is for you, and it's about something that many people posted about, something you said once about the interplay of religion and politics. And to quote you directly, you said, "What faith can do is not tell you what is right, but give you the strength to do it." The question being, what role did faith play in your most important decision as Prime Minister, the invasion of Iraq?
I think we can nail this one pretty easily. It was not about religious faith. And, you know, one of the things that I sometimes say to people is look, the thing about religion and religious faith is if you are a person of faith, it's part of your character, it defines you in many ways as a human being. It doesn't do the policy answers, I'm afraid. Okay? So as I used to say to people, you know, you don't go into church and look heavenward and say to God, right, next year the minimum wage, is it £6.50 or £7? Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you the answer. And even on the major decisions that are to do with war and peace that I've taken, they were decisions based on policy. And so they should be, and you may disagree with those decisions, but they were taken because I genuinely believe them to be right.
So, Christopher, the natural follow-on question to you is, how did you square the circle, or maybe you didn't, between your support for the Iraq War and, let's say, the current then-President, George W. Bush, and his very public evocation of faith in terms of his rhetoric around the invasion?
Well, I don't remember. In fact, I don't think you can point out to me any moment where George Bush said he was under divine order or had any divine warrant for the intervention in Iraq. I'm perfectly certain that he might not have minded at some points giving that impression, but he wanted to give that impression about everything that he did. George Bush is someone who, as with his immediate predecessor, after various experiments in faith, ended up in his wife's church, most comfortable place for him to be. She's after all is the one who said to him, "If you take another drink, you scumbag, I'm leaving and taking the kids," which is his way of saying he found Jesus and gave up the bottle. We know this. We know this to be true. Now, like a good Methodist, I was at a Methodist school for many years myself. Like a good Methodist, George Bush says the following: "I've done all I can with this argument and with this conflict. From now on, all is in God's hands." That's quite different, I think. Would have made him a perfectly good Muslim, as a matter of fact. Combination of fatalism with a slightly sinister feeling of being chosen. Anyway. No, what's striking most to the eye of those who observe the debate on what Tony Blair and I agree to call the liberation of Iraq is the unanimous opposition of the leadership of every single Christian church to it, including the President's own and now the Prime Minister's own. The Methodist Church in the United States adamantly opposed, the Vatican adamantly opposed, as it had been to the liberation of Kuwait in 1991. Not the first time in the world that a sort of sickly Christian passivity has been preached in the face of fascist dictatorship. And of course, I was very surprised by the number of liberal Jews who took the same about a regime that harbored genocidal thoughts towards them. And if it comes to that, but I'm not the arbiter of what's rational in the mind of the religious thinker, given the number of Muslims put to the sword by Saddam Hussein's regime, quite extraordinary to see the extent to which Muslim fundamentalists flock to his defense. But I don't expect integrity or consistency from those quarters. But those of us who worked with people, with Iraqi intellectuals like Kanan Makia, with the Kurdish leadership, the secular left opposition of the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, the Iraqi Communist Party, I have to give it credit for this, many feminists and other secular who'd worked for years to bring down Saddam Hussein, are very proud of our solidarity with those comrades, those brothers and sisters. We're still in touch with them. We have nothing to apologize for. It's those who would have kept a cannibal and a Caligula and a professional sadist in power who have the explaining to do. Thank you.
Well, I want to be conscious of our time and go to our two final on-stage questions, and I believe the first one is for Mr. Blair, a student at the Monk School of Global Affairs. Introduce yourself and ask your question to Mr. Blair.
Yes, good evening. My name is Jonah Cantor, and my question pertains to something that's come up earlier this evening. Religion on both sides is often seen as an obstacle to peace in the Middle East, and I was wondering what role you believe faith can play in a positive manner in helping to bring peace between Israelis and Palestinians.
Well, I remember a few months back I was in Jericho, and when you go out from Jericho, they took me up to we went to visit the Mount of Temptation, which is where I think they take all the politicians, and the guide that was showing us around, the Palestinian guide, he suddenly stopped at one point and he said, "This part of the world," he said, "Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, why did they all have to come here?" And I sort of said, "Well, supposing they hadn't, would everything be fine?" And he said, "Oh, probably not." But you know, the religious leadership can play a part in this. For example, I don't think you will get a resolution of the issue of Jerusalem unless, which is a sacred and holy city to all three Abrahamic faiths, unless people of faith are prepared to try and find common ground so that they are entitled to worship in the way that they wish. And it's correct that in both Israel and Palestine you see examples of religious fundamentalism and people espousing and doing extreme things as a result of their religion. But I can also tell you that there are rabbis and people of the Muslim faith on the Palestinian side who are desperately trying to find common ground and ways of working together. And I think, you know, part of the issue, and the reason indeed for me starting my faith foundation, is that we can argue forever the degree to which what is happening in the Middle East is a result of religion or the result of politics. But one thing is absolutely clear, that without those religious faith playing a positive and constructive role, it's going to be very difficult to reach peace. So my view, again, and I think this is in a sense one of the debates that underlies everything we've been saying this evening, is if it is correct that you're not going to simply eliminate religion, you know, you're not going to drive religion out of the world, then let's work on how we make those people of different faiths, even though they believe that their own faith is the path, so they believe, to salvation, how they can work across the faith divide in order to produce respect and understanding and tolerance. Because, believe it or not, amongst all the examples of prejudice and bigotry that Christopher quite rightly draws attention to, there are also examples of people of deep religious faith, Jewish, Muslim and Christian, who are desperately trying to search for peace, and with the right political will supporting that, who would play a major part in achieving peace. So I agree, a religion has to one degree created these problems, but actually people of different religious faiths working together can also be an important part of resolving these problems. And that's what we should do, and it's what we can do, and in respect of Jerusalem, it is absolutely imperative that we do.
Visitor goes to the Western Wall. Anything he can do. Visitor goes to the Western Wall, sees a man tearing at his beard, banging his head on the wall, shoving messages into it at the rate of knots, wailing and flailing, watches with fascination. When the guy finally breaks off, says, "Excuse me, I couldn't help noticing you were being unusually devout in your addresses to the wall, to the divine. Do you mind if I asked you what you were praying for?" He said, "I was praying that there should be peace, that there should be mutual love and respect between all the peoples in this area." And said, "And what do you think?" says the visitor. Says, "Well, it's like talking to the wall." But there are people who think talking to walls is actually a form of divine worship in this part of the world. And it's another instance, and not that I didn't bring it up laboriously myself, but I don't mind it again, of the difference between Tony and myself when he uses his giveaway phrase, "in the name of religion," rather than as a direct consequence of scriptural authority, which is what I mean when I talk about this. No one's going to deny, are they? No one is going to deny there are awards of real estate made in the Bible by none other than Jehovah himself. That land is promised to human primates over other human primates in response to a divine covenant. Do excuse me. Sorry, this sometimes happens. No, that can't be denied. When David Ben-Gurion was prime minister of what he still called a secular state, he called in Yigal Yadin and Finkelstein and the other Israeli archaeologists, professional guys, and said, "Go out into the desert and dig up the title deeds to our state. You'll find our legitimate." That was the instruction to the Department of Archaeology. They went, after they conquered Sinai and West Bank, they went even further afield, looking for some evidence Moses had ever been there. They didn't find any because there never has been and there never will be any. But you cannot say that the foundational cause, casus belli in this region, the idea that God intervenes in real estate and territorial disputes, isn't inscribed in the text itself. And not only in the Jewish text, but thanks to a foolish decision taken in the early Christian centuries, where it was decided not to dump the New Testament, but and to start again just with the Nazarene story. Great Christian theologians like Marcion were in favor of doing that. Why do we want to bring the darkness and tyranny and terror and death and blood and cultism of the first books along with us? Surely we should start again. No, we're saddling ourselves with all that. So this is a responsibility for the Christian world too. And need I add that there is no good Muslim who does not say that Allah tells us we can never give up an inch of Muslim land, and that once our mosques are built there can be no retreat. It would be a betrayal. It would lead you straight to hell. In other words, yes, they gibber and jabber, all of them, the three religions. Yeah, you're quite right. God awards land. It's just you've got the wrong title. No. This is what I mean when I say the religion is a real danger to the survival of civilization, and that it makes this banal regional national dispute, which if reduced to its real proportions is a nothingness, if it makes that not just lethally insoluble, but is drawing in other contending parties who really openly wish, for an apocalyptic conclusion to it, as also bodied forth in the same scriptural texts. In other words, that it will be the death of us all, the end of humanity, the end of the world, the end of the whole suffering vale of tears, which is what they secretly want.